Joining me now, friend of the show, at Legendary Energy on X is An0maly. And I want to talk about Trump's speech last night, and I want to get your take on it. So let's start there. What did you think about that speech last night? And then I think from there, we'll talk about the reaction to it. But what was your interpretation and your response to watching and hearing Trump speak last night?
I'm not even going to lie. I didn't even watch it. I was kind of watching the reaction to it, and it seemed like he just rolled all his True Social posts into a speech. But yeah, I didn't even listen to it, to be honest.
So let's talk reaction then. We can jump right into reaction. Honestly, you didn't mitch much. It was mostly copy and paste from, his last 20 speeches, and then they announced a 1776 bonus for the military, which actually I'm finding out was kind of a lie. They actually already had that cooked into the books. They already cooked that into the budget with the omnibus bill. So it wasn't even a new thing. So he even kind of lied about that too.
Yeah, I was just watching a few clips and the reactions and stuff. But once I saw the people that I trust and the people that seem like they tell the most truth saying it seemed like recycled, the same things he was saying, I was like, I'll spare 30 minutes. I'll just watch some UFC podcast or something.
Yeah, well, you didn't miss much. Here's where I'm watching this, and I kind of saw this for years, and you've always been able to kind of split the difference. You've always been able to split the difference here. But what I noticed, it's like, I'm somebody that's been on the right. I think it would be fair to say, especially with my support for Trump since 2015. I don't like being put in a box, but okay, you can say I've been on the right, and politically I probably am. But I remember we would sit here, whether it was the Obama years or the Biden years, and we'd watch these speeches from Obama, from Biden, or even a Gavin Newsom, and we'd see the left respond to it, and we'd be like, wait a second, did we even watch the same video? Like, this is weird. It's like we didn't even watch the same video. Now that's happening on the right, and last night was the big moment where you had all the MAGA cheerleaders and sycophants talking about how great it was. Oh my gosh, they're overwhelmed. And then meanwhile, I'm watching this like, wait a second, what did you see? Do we even live in the same world?
Right. I saw two responses back to back in my feed, and I thought it was so perfect. It was two Daily Wire employees. One of them was Michael Knowles, and he was like, it was such a brilliant move from Trump to beat the media or whatever. And then Matt Walsh tweeted out, that was one of the most pointless press conferences I've ever seen in my life. So I was like, I trust Matt a lot more than Michael Knowles as far as him saying it was pointless. And yeah, at this point, I think it's like the Trump butt sniffers versus people who are being honest. And even putting Andrew Jackson, he put his name in the plaque of Andrew Jackson, and people are freaking out on my Facebook where they're way more pro-Trump. And they're like, An0maly, why does it matter? And I'm like, do you not see how ridiculous it is for a president like hundreds of years old to insert your own name in a paragraph about them? Like, you weren't even alive on this earth when they were serving. He can't even talk about Andrew Jackson without putting himself in there. He's like ridiculous now. It's kind of funny, but it's also kind of sad. Like, it depends how you look at it.
Well, it might be funny if we weren't 40 trillion in debt. It might be funny if our military wasn't being used to secure oil deals for oil companies. It might be funny if we aren't giving billions of dollars to foreign countries where millions of people are dying because of it. Then it might be funny. Then it might be funny if Americans weren't broke and struggling. But all of those things are true, and so it's not so funny. And it's really becoming this vanity project. And I'm sitting here, and I look at those plaques, and isn't it the same thing, too? You bring it up. It's like, I see this. They're like, oh, my gosh, Trump butt sniffers. That's a good one. I don't know. That one might hit them a little too close to home. But
yeah.
They're like, oh, my gosh, look at the plaques. Oh, this is so great. And I'm just like, what are you why? What is so great about that? Tell me what these plaques accomplish.
No,
Nothing.
For sure. And I think that little thing he had where he brought Miriam Adelson on the stage and he was saying that he took $250 billion, and that sort of him talking about the Israeli lobby. And I'm just going to quote Trump, because obviously like me or you can't say this. It's like terrible anti-Semitism when we say it, but Trump said it. So I'm going to quote him. He called it the Jewish lobby. And to me, that was the big story of the week, him admitting that the Israeli lobby is powerful when I was told it doesn't exist and I'm an anti-Semite. Like that to me supersedes like a Gunther Eagleman or a Cat Turd. Like, this is the greatest speech I've ever heard, coach. It's like, get in the ball game, champ. You're a sport. I don't know. these people, the reason I laugh is because I don't know, it feels like the same story on loop. So I almost become part of it if I don't at least try to find some humor in it, because I think the tragedy of it's obvious, and it's almost like these people never change. But a lot of people are waking up, and I'm sure you see it as well. So that's okay.
Well, there's no doubt that this administration is spurring an awakening in a very unorthodox way. In fact, it's so heavy to me that I'm just sitting here wondering, because I like to look at all the different angles and ask all the questions. And that's why I say anybody that tells you not to ask questions doesn't want you to be knowledgeable, doesn't want you to be informed, doesn't want you to expand your consciousness, really wants you to be enslaved, quite frankly. So you always got to ask questions, even the ones you don't like the answers to, even the questions you don't like. And I'm just like, dude, this thing is so over the top now. I almost can't believe it's not intentional. I'm like, how could Trump possibly expose the Israeli lobby more than he has? It's like, if he actually tried to do it, I don't know how he could do it better than the way he's done it. It's like, now I'm just like, this has to be intentional. It's that bad.
I want to bring up two options because I talked about it in my live stream yesterday, and I'm not giving Trump a pass. Me and you were very, critical of Trump, but there's two options. Either he's so into it that he just doesn't even notice he's doing it, like he thinks he's bragging about it, or it really could, like you said, kind of be an intentional cry for help. Because when he talked about Sheldon Adelson, he was saying how aggressive he was at the White House, and I think he said something like, he really cared about Israel. That's all he really cared about. And like, it almost kind of seems like a, hey guys, this is what's really going on. But the only way I could tell you is if I like make a joke out about it. I'm like, you're the best, and this is all she cares about. They only care about this. I swear, guys. So yeah, maybe Trump really is a genius, and he's helping us.
You remember when you were like raping me in bed last night? You remember that, guys? Guys, he was raping me in bed last night.
I mean, anything is definitely possible, but it's hard to tell with Trump. That's what makes him such an interesting character. Like whether you love him or hate him, he really is a fascinating like human being. Even putting his name in an Andrew Jackson statue, it's ridiculous, it's obnoxious, but it's like, who else would do that? Like Trump really is a one of one. He's like a cartoon character.
I actually am Andrew Jackson. There was no Andrew Jackson. It was me. I was leading the Trail of Tears. That was my idea. Well, he seems to he seems to be into this new vanity at the White House. I've never seen anything like it. It's worse than Obama, where it's just like label everything Trump. You got Trump RX, you got Trump Ballroom, you got the Trump Center now, you got a Trump coin, a Trump watch, a Trump shoe, and it's always been his branding thing. And he's always been consistent. He likes to keep his people guessing and, kind of chaotic. He's always operated in that environment. I just feel like it's kind of like what you said. It almost feels like it's gotten to his head to such a degree that he can't. I don't know if it's a gatekeeping issue or it's just he's so high on the supply right now that he's just completely out of touch with his base.
Yeah, I mean, I think Trump is the type of person that if you challenge him, you can't work for him. So he's definitely surrounded himself by people who, are just yes men. I did a video on Dan Bongino today because he's leaving the FBI, and I was going through old clips, and Dan said getting the vaccine was one of the worst mistakes he's made. He regrets it. And his logic behind it was that, the vaccine's American and he thought the virus was China. So like America versus China. And I was like, wow, that's really dumb. But then I saw him interview Trump, and he was like, my friend told me, make sure you get credit for the vaccine, not Biden. And I'm like, dude, you said it was the biggest regret of your life. Like, why wouldn't you in an interview with Trump be like, hey, I'm not as big of a fan of the product as you are? But that's the type, like these people say getting that was the worst decision of their life. They feel like it affected them negatively. Yet when they talk to him, they're like, sir, yes, sir. It's like everybody acts like dogs. They act like dogs for Trump. And then Trump and his administration acts like dogs, for the lobby that must not be named. That doesn't exist, but also does exist, so.
Well, that's exactly what it is. And you bring that up. It kind of brings me back to this point now, because obviously I was way more ingrained and invested in MAGA than you were. So for me to go against the grain now, it's a totally different process than for you, who's been a little more consistent as far as that. I posted this video. This was 2 days ago, but I also did a video 2 weeks ago, and I think it was actually 2 months ago after Charlie got shot, where I had somebody that was like, yeah, Bongino was planning to leave, and then Charlie got shot, and he said, okay, I have to stick around for this investigation. And then it was 2 weeks ago, somebody said, okay, get ready. The announcement is coming. And then 2 days ago, I had another source tell me it's a done deal. It's over. So I posted this. This was December 16th. And I think actually the show was from the 15th. I posted this on the 16th. Owen Shroyer discusses Dan Bongino's likely resignation from the Trump administration. And you look at the MAGA responses to this, and it's, you're a liar, you're fake news, you're this, you're that. And I'm just like, okay, you know what? If I doubted my sources, I wouldn't be telling you this, but that's fair. All right, you want to attack me. And it's just like, and then here we are, and I was totally proven right. And it wasn't me. I just have sources. I just had good sources that told me that I trust. And I end up being right. And it's just like, why do these people, that's what's so crazy about it to me. It's like, now MAGA is attacking the truth tellers.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've seen it for years because during the lockdown, a lot of Q people thought the lockdown was a good thing. Because I remember being like, wait, this is not good. But the whole Q, even though there was a lot of truth sprinkled in, it was kind of like Trump's the good guy. Martial law's the time when he's going to arrest the pedos. So when the lockdown happened,
the arrests were going down. Yeah, well, that didn't work out, huh?
Yeah, so they were bugging out at me for like 2 months in the craziest manner, like during the lockdown, where I'm like, yo, this is bad news, guys. And they're like, if you report against it, you're getting in the way. And I was like, holy crap, these people are cooked. And then it was like Operation Warp Speed was secretly a good thing. I've heard it for so long. I guess it doesn't shock me anymore. But, you know, there's a huge kind of curve happening because Trump used to be kind of a big tent for everybody. Like, even though he went at Massey during the lockdown, he ended up, I think, endorsing Massey in the next election. So Trump would always like throw his weight, but then be like, okay, like I'm a big tent for Lindsey Graham and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And even though I don't like Lindsey Graham, I'm a rational person. It's like, I get it. Trump's got to play the game a little bit. But now when he's like, I'm endorsing Lindsey Graham, but I'm going to try to run Marjorie Taylor Greene, Rand Paul, Thomas Massey out of office. I have 2 mega donors, Elon Musk, Miriam Adelson. He has more, but I'm just saying those 2. Elon runs out of the White House realizing Trump's not serious about the deficit and says he's in the Epstein files. Miriam Adelson and Dershowitz want him to have a 3rd term. Like, when you start seeing this dichotomy, Trump stopped pretending to be a big tent for MAGA and people like Marjorie. And he's basically like, you're with me or you're against me. And with me is Rubio and Graham now. So I think that's like the big difference where people are turning on you even harder. Trump's taking these harder stances and isolating the people that we like. So then we voice our opinions about it. And you really see who's like brainwashed. Because there's a lot of people on my page that are like, I voted for Trump 3 times and he's really pissing me off. And I'm like, that's what's up. But then there's like the, you know, they listen to like Cat Turd and they're like, Owen, how dare you? How dare you make sense? I don't want to hear it now. And you're like, whoa.
Well, and I look at all of this now through the lens of the Epstein files, and you bring up, and I understand now why Trump may be less inclined to kind of run with the big tent. Like, okay, we'll go with the people on the right, like the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, and we'll go with the people on the right, like the Lindsey Grahams. Now, I mean, theoretically, he's a dead duck president. Half of me thinks that they're going to cancel the election and Adelson is just going to make him run again. But, you know, maybe I say that in jest. We'll see. But no, now it's like, okay, he's a lame duck president. He can't run again. So now he doesn't need to do the big tent stuff. Now he can do the stuff that he's supposed to be doing for the donor. So yeah, now it's like, get rid of MTG, get rid of Thomas Massey, get rid of Rand Paul. These are the people he's campaigning against while he's endorsing Lindsey Graham. I mean, if that doesn't tell you enough already, I don't know what does. But what do all these things have in common? Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene. These are some of the people on the right that are pushing the hardest for the Epstein files. And so I'm sitting here now and you watch Trump kind of running cover for the whole thing now, calling it a hoax. And now I'm sitting here, I'm running, how much do the Epstein files really play into all of this? It's like, sometimes I'm like, okay, are we overplaying this hand? And then other times I'm like, are we actually underplaying this hand? You know, people, let's not forget, Epstein died in the prison cell when Trump was president.
Right.
And so I can't help, my mind goes these places. I go through, it's like, you know, in a video game or something, when you look at every single part on the map, that's, if I'm playing a video game, I look at every single part on the map. There's not a single part on the map I'm not going to explore. So I'm exploring every part of the map. And now I'm like, did Trump give the hit on Epstein? Like, was Trump part of the hit on Epstein? And then, of course, here comes Bongino and Patel. Of course, they're going to go in front of the media and say, oh, yeah, nothing to see with the Epstein thing. Nothing to see here. It's like, how much do you think we put too much into the Epstein files, or do you think that really is a thread that kind of ties all this together?
I want to use a quick example because it's similar to the Epstein thing. I saw somebody today, and then I'll answer your question. They were talking about the Venezuela stuff, and they showed an article, a Fox News article, where Biden was going after narco terrorists as well. And they said, see, the Democrats are liars. And I'm like, absolutely, they are liars. But here's what you don't understand. That just shows that Trump and Biden are not that different in foreign policy. And that's the real story, not the fact that Democrats are lying. Epstein files, same exact thing. Are Democrats lying? Of course, but like we never thought they were going to release it because Democrats are fake. So, the Trump administration will say, well, the Democrats are lying about it. True. They don't actually care about it. Absolutely. They're pushing biased stuff through it to benefit them. Yes, they are. But, I truly think that with the Epstein stuff, there's a combination of both. I think some people, you could say whatever you want about Epstein and like, you sound like a truther, like you could make the craziest statement and it's like, oh, maybe, who knows, So there's part of that. But also I do think that like the big story, besides what everybody knows about Epstein, is how like important and powerful he was. I think it was Dershowitz who said that he was introduced to him by Lady and Lord Rothschild. So with Trump, I think everybody's kind of said because they like Trump doesn't know anything or he kicked him out of the club and they weren't really that good of friends because that plays into the Trump narrative. But I think the truth is this guy, it's hard to really describe, but it seems like he knew every powerful person, multiple people from foreign countries, like world leaders, top guys everywhere. It was introduced to someone by the Rothschilds. Like clearly this guy was like a top power player. And I think Trump just doesn't want, he's like, oh, he wasn't that big of a factor. Like, I think he was, so when there's mystery, people just start filling in the gaps with whatever they want. So I do think there's probably some sloppy reporting being done by everybody. And honestly, probably some victims that are real and then some that are, not. It's like, I don't really know because I haven't heard all the stories, but I'm sure a lot of them are telling the truth. Maybe some of them aren't. But at the end of the day, like clearly he was a powerful player. Clearly he was playing a massive role. And I think that's why disclosure is not really coming fast is because both sides are lying about it. Trump's saying this, Democrats are saying this, and it creates this kabuki theater where it's like they're lying, they're hypocrites. But I don't think Bill Clinton wants anything to come out any more than Trump does. So why didn't Democrats drop it? Why would they drop it? Like, that's not even a good talking point. Like, they want to show. It's not like Epstein only worked with Republicans. And I want to say that's the problem with not understanding this stuff. It's like, oh, the left has donors. So is the right. The left sold out to corporations. So's the right. Like, until you realize it's both parties doing a lot of this stuff, they play off each other. And it's like, oh, it's only Kamala and Biden. It's like, all right, probably not, but okay.
Well, and I forget the exact number, but when Epstein started up as a financier, he went from a teacher's aide at Bill Barr's dad's class. He was a teacher aide for Bill Barr, former Attorney General Bill Barr. He was his teacher aide for his father's class. I believe that was at Harvard. And he went from that to being a quote unquote financier. And then I think it was in the 80s. I think it was in the late 80s. He had his it
was the Dalton School. Sorry, I just looked it up. The Dalton School, not Harvard. That's where he taught.
So the Dalton School with Bill Barr's father. So he goes from that to this financier role, where this is where he starts to get connected to the elites of the world, as you were describing. And then I think it was in the early 80s or late 80s maybe. He had his pitch for his financier company was he only took clients that were billionaires. He only took clients that were billionaires. And I believe at the time there were only 13 billionaires in the world. So, I mean, it's literally the top of the financial pyramid that this guy was connected to. And now we get more of this stuff. We see him obviously with Trump, with Bill Gates. He was clearly the elite pimp. I mean, that would be he was the pimp for the elites. And maybe he was doing money washing for some of them. Maybe he was hooking them up with, a nice hooker that they could sleep with, that their wife wouldn't know, whatever, maybe a combination of the two. It's obvious this is what was going on. And I think about, obviously he was getting protected through the years, right? He was obviously getting protected. They kept spiking the cases. They kept getting him released from jail. And I'm just thinking, well, a guy like that in the 21st century, I think becomes more of a liability for them now, because they really don't need to run these pimp parties. They don't need to run these sex islands. They might still do it for fun, but for blackmail, now that everything is digital, now that you have everything digital on the internet, your social media profiles, everything you're doing, your browsing, everything, every transaction you make. Now they can just look at your digital life and easily blackmail people. They can find out if you're cheating on your wife. They can find out if you're gay. They can find out what you've been watching on the internet. They can find out if you've been doing anything illegal with money. They don't need an Epstein to do that anymore. So it's like his purpose was kind of retired. And so it's like, yeah, he's more of a liability now. Get him out of here.
It's definitely a possibility, because I think also when he's like recording everybody back in the day, that was harder to do. Not everyone had technology to record. Like you had to be like a psycho or pretty much a cop or something to have that technology. So it's like nobody was really expecting it back then. Like imagine partying in the 90s and 2000s. You're not even thinking of cell phones. Now everybody has cell phones. Everyone has spying devices, as you're saying. And just like that's true, I think it's also true that other people could probably catch him doing stuff a lot easier. Like it was probably way easier to get away with and nobody really knew about it 30 years ago. So it's definitely a possibility. One thing that I've thought, and this might not be popular to say because I don't know what everyone thinks. Like obviously I think some people were fooling around with women and girls in the presence of Epstein, no doubt. But I think everybody just assumes that everybody near him and everybody on his flight log was. And I think he probably did a combination of stuff. Like some of it was financial. Some of it was just like get these people, connect certain people, push people in a certain direction, lobby people, leverage people using other means as well. So I think the big story, at least for me, is like, I think he was playing a huge role in compromising people in every way possible. Not like, oh, he went on his flight 2 times, he's guilty, he's done stuff with girls. It's like, it's not necessarily true, but definitely Epstein was trying to get that person, or at least Epstein was trying to, in some way, like attach their life to his life or their finances to something he wanted to do, or push them in the direction of people that he worked with. So it seems to me like he was even bigger than like just a pimp or something. Like he was so powerful. I mean, just the people who would sleep at his apartment and stuff like that, all that stuff that's coming out. I would love for more disclosure. I think that's why everybody's so fascinated in the Epstein files for many reasons. It's like, we really want to know what the heck was going on, even though I think pretty much every smart person that has an internet connection can pretty much figure out the gist of it at this point, except for the politicians. They're completely clueless. They just don't know. It's just the left. It's a Democrat hoax, or it's a Trump hoax because he wrote in a coloring book or signed a letter 50 years ago. Like that's not the huge scoop.
It's actually insane. Like you said, when you just look into it, I mean, I would say 99.8% certainty that Epstein was obviously an intelligence asset, probably a double agent, even to such a degree that he wielded power over the political leaders at certain periods of time. He had so much blackmail and power over everybody that financial and political leaders were actually basically answering to him, and emails and messages kind of proved that was the case.
Right. No, what I saw the one recently where they said like the one female Democrat was texting him during a congressional hearing, and she was like, oh, he's my constituent or whatever. It's like, bro, texting Epstein in the 2010s while you're in Congress, that's crazy. But that only scratches the surface, like you said, of the leverage he had over people. And I think that's really the game that certain people are playing. They're looking for massive leverage. And if you're a person that only does it for moral means, it's going to be hard to keep up with people that will literally, if they can't get financial leverage over you or scare you or censor you, then I think they go to blackmail, where they're like, wait, you don't want to do number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Well, here's number 7. Okay, now you want to do number 5. And I think a lot of the war stuff is like that too. Like, people always talk about false flags, and it's hard to tell which one is real and not. And obviously back in the day, there's provable false flags. Like not everything's just a stupid conspiracy theory. And I think there's an element of that in the world too, where it's almost like, like do this war or else we're going to find some way, whether it's the way they did it in Iraq or, none of the stories really add up. They went to fight Al-Qaeda, but then an Al-Qaeda leader takes over Syria and then gets invited to the White House. The more you look into it, there's holes all over these stories, but I don't think the average person like wants to think that way. They're like, we're fighting radical Islam. It's like one of the most radical Islamic groups has a leader who was invited to the White House because he's reformed now. I guess 5 years goes by, he's not Al-Qaeda anymore. Good for him.
Well, it'd be like, imagine if somebody doesn't understand that they're looking at a puzzle and they just see the pieces, but they don't know what it is. They don't know that all the pieces put together a larger picture. So they just kind of look at each piece and then put it down. And then you're like, no, this is a puzzle. You put the pieces together. There's a bigger thing here. And they just don't even know it. They don't know what a puzzle is. They can't even comprehend there's another picture and you're trying to explain it. And they just literally, there's just that disconnect. They don't even know what a puzzle even is.
Yeah. And I think to that note, okay, I thought you froze for a second, but some people have a bias, so they fill in pieces that aren't there. Where, like, for me, at least personally, I like Trump. I had a massive pro-Trump bias, right? 2017, 2018, 2019. It wasn't until somebody made a report about like Trump taking Miriam Adelson donor money in 2019, and I saw it, and it was kind of hard to admit. And I was like, dang, I didn't know. I thought he was so rich he didn't take people's money. So I was able to take that in and be like, well, I can't disprove that. So I guess I got to go with it. And I think most people, if they see something like that, they reject that piece of the puzzle because they're like, no. I just want to talk about like George Soros and the left. And I just want to talk about these donors and rhinos. So it takes a really honest person. And I saw you tweet something great the other night. I like a lot of your tweets. You seem like a really chill guy, but you're talking about self-awareness and self-accountability and discernment, where it's like, if you're a fool, you keep getting fooled. So it takes a really kind of disciplined person to admit when they're wrong and also just adapt to new evidence. I think most people reject evidence that doesn't play into their bias.
You brought up some of the stuff that you theorize, how they get politicians to go along with war or other agendas. And, you might even have a better understanding of how that happens in the music industry. And we got a little bit of that. We got a kind of a keyhole view into that with some of the Diddy stuff and some of his former producers. But it's kind of a similar thing, I think, where a lot of people don't know how the music industry works. And you might even know, you might know better than me. But, what they do is basically a lot of stuff. This is what actually what'll blow people's minds. A lot of the music that you hear from some of these popular artists, it's not even their music. It's literally not even their music. It's somebody else's music that these production companies buy, and they go to these smaller artists and they say, hey, you got a good song here, but you're a nobody, you're a nothing, you're never going to be famous. So we're going to purchase this from you, and we'll give you either a check or you'll get royalties, but we're going to have this star performer perform your song, because you're never going to get rich off of it, but this is your way to do it. So that's one way they kind of do it. And then some of them go along with it. And then some of them say no. And then they might try to bring you to a party. And they might say, okay, well, he's not letting us have the music rights, but why don't we bring him to one of Diddy's parties, maybe? And maybe we can convince him that way. It's like, okay, you come to a party, we wine and dine you. And then we sit down the next day and we say, hey, do you want to do business? We can come party, come hang out with a guy. Do you want to do business? No, not really. I still don't want to do business. Really? Okay. Pull in the TV. We're in the 90s here. Wheel in the TV. Go ahead and wheel in the TV. Hit plug in the VCR here. Plug in the videotape. Oh, yeah. You guys remember doing that last night? Yeah. That girl's actually 16 years old. Did you know that? Oh, golly, you didn't, did you? Okay. Well, you got two options now. You can either let us buy your music, or I'll tell you what, we'll give you a record deal and you can try to make your own music. And there have been producers that have come out and basically explained this. But it's like, that's how they draw you in. It's like, hey, you can either do business with us now in this way, but if you say no, guess what? You're going to do business with us, but in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, I could speak on what I know. I know there's a lot of people in the industry who tell their own stories, and I'm sure there's a lot of crazy stories, especially when you start getting power and you become a big artist. I think the pressure mounts a lot more than if you're like less relevant. But when it comes to the producer thing, a lot of producers have ghost producers as well, because, if you can't get your beat placed, it's like, yo, sell it to me. I'll say it's mine. Same with a lot of songwriters. Like, it's just like, give it to the big pop star. You get a cut of it. But for me, because I actually, and a lot of people don't actually believe me. They're like, oh, you're not that good or whatever. I had multiple different meetings with huge distributors, major labels that everybody's heard of. I'm not going to say. And I never got that far. And I would say it's nearly identical between this and conservative media podcasting. Everybody acts the same way. Basically, they bring me in and they say, hey, because when I was 19, 20 years old, when YouTube first started, I had a couple million views. Jam Master Jay Sons from Run DMC were big fans of mine. So they brought me to labels and they were like shopping me around. And they'd basically be like, hey, you're cool. Why don't you rap about this? Well, why don't you dress up like this? And every time I would be like, do I have a say in this? Like, I talked to somebody recently was a pop star, and he was saying like he didn't get to choose like anything, but I would just start being like, yeah, I don't think that's really who I am. And then they just be like, oh, well, we're not really that interested. We have other artists. And then I'm a strong person. So I'm like, well, I don't care. I believe in myself. I think I'm a star, even if you don't. And then they don't talk to you again. Same thing happened to me in conservative podcasting, where it's like a humiliation ritual game where they're like, we like you, but let's see how moldable you are. Let's see how much we could steamroll you, and you'll just kind of take it. And I feel like that's kind of how they play, who they give certain powerful positions to, especially like if they have like 50 people to choose from. It's like, will you do the first thing, which is like harmless? It's just like, they're trying to just roll over you a little bit. Then will you do this? Then will you do this? And it's like a process. And it's the same with politics. The type of people, I mean, they're all over Congress. They're all over the television. They're running for office. They're total puppets. They want power. They want fame. So they'll do anything. Like, I don't even know what it's like to be like a Byron Donaldson. Sorry, Byron, for, only naming him. But it's like, to me, he's like a total Trump donor type, like pawn. And he just does whatever they say. And that's the type of people they look for. And there's a lot of people like that. So for me, I never really got in the industry per se, because every time I got an opportunity, I wouldn't do what they said. They weren't telling me like, go to a Diddy party and let's compromise you. It was more like, will you do this? Will you wear these clothes and do these type of songs? And I was like, no. However, I think if I would have said yes to some of those things and been like obvious, like where they're like, oh, this kid is so desperate for money and fame, maybe eventually they could have been like, do you want to go to a party or something? But I think out of their own protection, they kind of have like a tiered system. And if you don't roll over, same thing with the media. I knew in 2019, I could never work at Daily Wire or Fox News because I talked about Zionism. Like, I could tell that was kind of like a no-go zone. And I went there, even though I was nice about it. So I think the music industry is the same thing. There's a couple corporations, and they're looking for people that are harmless or that can push an agenda. And no disrespect to Jelly Roll, but it's like, to me, Jelly Roll, it's like they got this guy. He doesn't talk about politics. He's like Kevin Hart now. He's in every commercial. I'm sure he's a great guy, but I'm sure if he came out and started talking about politics, they'd be like, shut the fuck up.
Well,
Sorry.
And there's other examples too, like, there's these old videos of Tupac, and this is like another controversial subject, but there's like, you have these old videos of Tupac, and it's like, that's a gay dude. Like, that is a flamboyantly gay dude, and they turn him into this gangster rapper. And you do have other people that are honest in the industry, like a 50 Cent. I think 50 Cent tells a lot of truth about the industry, and he's like, yeah. And sometimes when you kind of read between the lines of their lyrics, like a DMX, you start to understand like what they were trying to say to you. It's like, hey, most of your favorite rappers are actually just gay dudes that they're turning into gangster thugs, because, like you said, they wanted you to talk about killing police. They wanted you to start using the N-word in every sentence. And so, yeah, some guys, you can bring them in and just say, hey, look, here's what you got. You can either do this with us and become a multimillionaire, or you can continue to do your own thing and be irrelevant. And of course, they have a list of guys that they can try to bring in and do it. And they might have a priority list, but eventually they can get the desired result out of anybody that they want.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who was or wasn't gay. I've seen the videos of Tupac being very like, he was like a theater kid, you know what I'm saying? Kind of definitely flamboyant. But I think they became a character to some extent. And then it's like Hulk Hogan. It's like, when Hulk Hogan was alive, right? I think he recently passed, but it's like, could he be himself ever? Or like, was he Hulk Hogan or whatever his real name was, like Terry or something? Like, nobody knows Terry. They only know Hulk Hogan. Like DMX. I remember Leo Cohen, not that he's the most trustworthy person to believe, but he was saying like nobody really knew who DMX was. Like, he loved to fish and just like be in the middle of nowhere. But he always had to be DMX for the cameras and for everybody else. And I think, I don't know how much of that's organic or self-chosen and how much of that is industry pressured. I know Grandmaster Caz, who was the original guy who wrote the Sugar Hill Rappers Delight, and I think somebody stole it from him. His old manager stole the original rap song from him and then rapped his name in it, even though it wasn't his name. Like, you knew he stole it, because it would be like me stealing your thing and be like, my name is Owen. And it's like, all right, bro, like, you definitely stole that from Owen. I'm like, no. But Yeah, he said that basically all the industry wanted to put out gangster rap. So if you were this black dude who was like conscious and lyrical, like a lot of people were at the beginning of hip hop, it didn't start super gangster or anything. They story told, but it wasn't gangster and crazy. The labels were like, we're not interested in you. So I don't know that this is the case, but I'm just going to use it as an example. It's like, say somebody came and they were really talented, but they weren't doing stuff that was crazy. They're like, why don't you act insane and then we might sign you? Eminem, his first album, Infinite, it's not deranged and insane, but then he like gets signed to Dr. Dre, and all of a sudden he's talking about like killing his mom and like his wife and all this drugs and stuff. Like that wasn't. He talked about God in Infinite, his first album. So yeah, you really gotta wonder how much of that is like the industry being like, let's mold you into this, this monster that'll be so much more sellable. And it's like records sold back when they used to talk about love and their kids and stuff. It's not like everyone had to do that. So I do think there is a nefarious agenda 100% to push culture in a certain direction that's not in the benefit.
Yeah, I think about Jurassic 5, and it's like you go back and you listen to that type of rap pop, and it's like, yeah, they didn't have to get degenerate and talk about that stuff. And you bring up Dre, it's like, really, if there was a singular moment or a singular group where everything changed, it was NWA. That was really what changed. I think, in my opinion, you may disagree, but in my opinion, it was NWA that kind of changed the entire industry. That went from kind of classical rap, hip hop to gangster rap. That was controlled by the music industry to try to drive this agenda, which was mostly aimed at young black men. And you can see what happened to the culture of young black men when they did that, when they made that shift. I mean, it's obvious. It's the most influential culture now on young black men. At least it definitely was in the 90s and the early 2000s. I don't know about today, but you saw that happen in NWA, and I like their music, by the way. I listen to their music. It's good stuff. But it's like, that's how you can see how powerful it is. It's like, okay, we're going to take this entire genre and we're going to turn it into a weapon. And we're going to influence the youth and watch the product we get. And now we see it.
Well, like I was saying in that documentary I watched, that's exactly the moment that he said everything changed. I think it was Grandmaster Caz, but he said after NWA, they only wanted to sign groups like that. So if you were talented, they're like, that's not really what we're looking for. And it's similar. Imagine if, you go to a media company and they're like, Owen, you got a good look to you, you're cool, you're well-spoken, you could read the teleprompter, you're honest, but you criticize Trump too much, you call out the pharmaceutical industry, that's our main sponsor, and we definitely don't want you to talk about like the Israel lobby. So if you could like not do that, then we could sign you, but if not, this guy will do that. And I think that
has never happened to me, by the way. Nothing like that has ever happened to me, guys, so just stop it.
No, but it's equivalent to that sort of thing where it's like you literally can't work at those labels unless you kind of play ball or at least listen to them. For me, I had a couple million views on YouTube before they actually valued it. Like they would always tell me in the meetings, like, you're just a YouTube rapper. YouTube doesn't matter. That's how early I was when I blew up on YouTube. I was one of like the first rappers, I think, I wasn't that big on YouTube, but to get label meetings off of YouTube.
Like when Star Wars Kid was the biggest video on YouTube is when you were emerging.
2008, 2009, those are when I had my hits. I had a couple million views then, but they would literally tell me like, wear Abercrombie. And I go, dude, what do you want me to get beat up in the hood? Like, I don't wear Abercrombie. Like, let me dress like, I think I look cool how I'm dressed.
I'm shocked. You really come off as an Abercrombie type of guy.
Dude, there was a moment for sure. But I think by the time I was 20, I was like, dude, I wore Abercrombie when I was 14, 13.
Yeah, that was like 6th or 8th grade.
With the bird, you know what I'm saying? The popped up collar. I'm like, I try to get something working for the ladies, but no, when I turned 20, I was like, I'm not wearing Abercrombie anymore. And they got mad. They were like, ugh, well, that's what we want you to do. And I remember one time, this guy who lived in Brooklyn, I went back for a second meeting and he goes, An0maly, I'm blown away. Like I teach at a school and part-time or whatever to help out with the kids. And he goes, they knew who you were. And like the way he said it was crazy, where he's like, I just looked at you like a white kid. We were going to dress up in Abercrombie and like make dance around, but kids in the hood actually knew your raps. I was like, that's cool. So because I wouldn't do that, I think like the door is closed. But the conservative media, I'm not saying they did it to you, but I do think they do that to certain people. It's like, if pharmaceuticals are their main sponsors, why would they want someone on television pissing off the people that give them tens of millions of dollars? If everybody on television media doesn't seem to notice the Israeli lobby and cries about anti-Semitism all the time, then why would they want somebody on television like making everyone else look fake? I think that's why Tucker got kicked off TV. He was the best show and he was making everyone else look dumb. So I think the music industry and the news, I've seen two different parallels where no one specifically told me these things, but I've had a bunch of meetings. I've talked to a bunch of people. I've had, podcast meetings with people that were interested in signing me. And to me, they treat me exactly the same way the record labels did. It's so weird. It's like 10 years later, conservative media acts like liberal record labels. They talk the same. It's like this psychological game. It's like, Owen, like, can you want to do this? And you're like, no. And they're like, ooh, oh no. Okay. It's like a,
well, how much of that do you think is like, they're stunned when somebody won't sell out? I've kind of seen that myself, not as direct and, intimate as maybe you have, but I've kind of seen it myself where it's like, okay, here's an opportunity to do something. I mean, I guess I'll give it a direct example. Like, all of these different stuff that is starting to merge on social media where people are starting to notice. It's like, oh, social media is becoming like this local network news stuff where they plug the exact same thing into the local news teleprompter. The local news host from the network affiliate reads the exact same thing. And then you can play, 40 different local news hosts for the local Fox, CBS affiliate, whatever it is. And they literally say the exact same thing. Right. Well, people are now seeing that exact same thing is happening on social media. So I don't know, you got a big social media account. Maybe you've been, brought into these groups and they offer you money for posts to post about a subject material or a news story or an individual or even an attack or a smear campaign. And, people bring you these different offers. And when you turn them down, they're just like, what? Like, what? Like, this is basically like free money. And you're just like, yeah, no, I don't want to do this. It's a nice offer. I appreciate it. It's more than a fair offer, but I'm just going to pass. And they're just like stunned. They're like, what do you mean? You won't sell out for fame and fortune? I'm like, no. So it's like, they're stunned when people won't sell out. They expect you to sell out.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some like weird offers, never to like smear an influencer or something like that, but like someone hit me up one time where it was like they wanted me to like do an anti-CCP song. And I'm like, I'm not a fan of the CCP, like, but I'm not trying to be paid to make a song. Like, it just seemed weird to me. It was like, I don't know. It was like anti-CCP, like where I was like, I don't do propaganda music. If I make a CCP song, it's going to be out of the love, not out of like someone telling me to do it. And then also like just random sponsors. Most people will sell anything. I probably turn down 90% of sponsors because if I don't believe in it or think it's a good product, I'm not going to sell it. I'm not desperate for money. And the craziest part is compared to these other influencers and athletes and stuff, like I don't have that much money, but I have enough to turn it down. And I also would have turned it down when I had nothing. So I talked about it the other day on my show. You got these athletes with $500 million that are doing gambling sponsors. And it's like, bro, you can't turn down a gambling ad when you have $500 million.
Didn't you see you had Odell Beckham Jr. and then most recently Cam Newton. Now Newton has a TV deal, so he's at least getting checks. But both of these guys made over $100 million playing in the NFL. And they're complaining like it's hard to live. Like they can't live after making $100 million. And I'm like, okay, well, either one of two things is true. Either you're just lying or you spent all your money.
Yeah, I mean, they're just living above their means. It's hard to process, especially as for athletes really should know because it's one of those jobs where you can only do it for 20 years max. But it's like they're spending a couple $1 million a year, like they're going to be making $5 million for the rest of their lives. But you're making the money now, and then that money has to last for 40 years when you're not working. So I think they spent above their means and probably were balling out as if they were going to make those salaries forever, which is a miscalculation. But I think just principally, most people will sell out. Most people will work jobs that they don't believe in. Most people will say, well, I need the money. It doesn't matter if you have $500 million or $50. And I've always been that way since I was 19. I was literally broke, had zero money. And when I was offered my first few things from the music industry, it wasn't the greatest offer ever, but one time I'll just tell you, because I remember some of the numbers, they had this double deal where this one guy who was like a powerful guy at the time and knew all these people, distributors, etc. He's like, I'll be your manager and your record label. And I'm adding up the percentages. He would have owned 85% of my music. I would have only owned 15%. So I was like, bro, I don't care how much money you give me. There's no way I'm only owning 15% of my music. That's crazy. But I think in politics and stuff, everybody just sponsors ads, money, money, money. I understand it, but I also at the same time, it's the reason that everyone's so easy to manipulate. Who can turn down $250 million? Who could turn down $2,500, $5,000, $10,000? Like nobody seems to be able to do that. But to me, it's just who I am. It's how I am, and I do it with sponsors. I would say 90% of sponsors I turn down just because I wouldn't use the product, or I think it's like crap. Here's $5,000 to promote crap on Instagram. Yeah, you can have the $5,000. I'll just not do it. Like I'll find money elsewhere.
Well, and not everybody, you bring up the ownership rights. Not everybody has $1 billion like Taylor Swift to go back and buy their music back, right? It's like that was kind of a bit of a reveal there. Where it's like, for people that don't understand, they're like, why does Taylor Swift have to buy her own music? And then I think she ended up just remaking them. I think is what she ended up doing, was just remastering everything instead, and then made another $1 billion. And Taylor Swift does get a lot of heat, and whatever. She's famous. I'm not here to stick up for Taylor Swift. But she has kind of fought a couple good battles. She went up against the big record labels, and she did cut. I don't know if you ever saw that video, but after she did her big, I think it was her big Eras tour, and she made like a ridiculous amount of money. She cut 6-figure checks. She cut 6-figure bonus checks for everybody that worked on that tour. Trump gave the military $1,700. Taylor Swift gave groupies $100,000.
I mean, that's a great thing. I think if you're a good boss and you're making a fortune, it's nice to spread the love. I have an unpopular opinion real quick about her whole record label thing. The record company can't own your records unless you sell them to them. So the reason Taylor Swift was able to make so much money is because she signed a deal with a big record label. And as soon as she made all the money, now she wants to own her music, but you already sold it. So it's like the record label isn't necessarily wrong there, because you could be an independent artist and try to own your music. Oh, you don't want to do that? So I find that when Crowder and the Daily Wire thing was going on too, I wasn't a fan of the Daily Wire contract, but Crowder's like, look at this, look at that. It's like, dude, they're paying what, 50 million, 100 million, whatever the number was. It's like, if you're going to get that much money, like baseball player money, then they're going to own all your stuff. And if you don't want to take the baseball player money, then you got to do it on your own. And then you'll make less money slower, but you'll own all your stuff. I guess because I'm an independent artist, it's like I wouldn't have been as big as Taylor Swift, obviously, but it's like, take that route, sell out your soul, sell out all your stuff, and then complain about it 10 years later. None of these people want to put in the groundwork and just do it themselves, where I own 100% of all my music because I never sold it to anybody. She sold it, and that's why they promoted her and made her huge. So I'm not trying to take their side necessarily, but it's like all these people want to be indie afterwards, just like everybody, like when you can make money telling the truth about politics, now they want to do it. Now they want to be Trump fans, or now they want to talk about the Israel lobby. Maybe that's like people figured it out now, but I think a lot of people play it strategically and just kind of like wait for the moment to, where it's safe to do.
Well, I'm curious about that. Then it sounds like you got a pretty good level of information here. Do you know when she signed that deal? The reason why I ask is, she used to do concerts for free, because I remember she used to come to my hometown in St. Louis. It was actually a city just outside of St. Louis called St. Charles, way more country than St. Louis. And she went there twice, and she did free shows, I think when she was 15 years old. And of course, I went with my friends because we were 15 and there were other 15-year-old girls that were there. So, I mean, you can do the math. I was in my Abercrombie. And so I'm thinking, did she sign those deals when she was really young and they just took advantage of her because she was young, or did she sign them when she was older? Do you know when that happened?
That's a good point with the age. 2004, I guess 2005, she signed a big deal with Big Machine Records. And then it says 2004, she signed with Sony ATV. I know that she was like really hustling for a long time beforehand.
So that was when she was doing the free tour then. So they got her, they got her like when she was 14.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes they do a really good job, the labels, of like pretending like someone's indie when they're not, or like doing stuff that seems more organic than it is. But it's like, yeah, I guess I have more sympathy for sure if you're young, but I don't think she regrets anything. Like, I think if you went back or you asked Taylor Swift now and you're like, would you have not signed that deal? Even if someone says, oh, I never would have signed my things away, no one would know who Taylor Swift was if she didn't, like, they blew her up. And without that machine in 2006, there's a 0% chance Taylor Swift's as big as she is now. I think she could have made it in the social media era, but she would have had to wait, 15 years and passed up. I've been like 32 trying to make it and like blow up out of nowhere, which is really hard to do. So it's one of those things where, it's the same with this sort of thing. Like, oh, I have to take the vaccine because my boss will fire me. Like, I have to stop talking about big pharma or else I can't work at, this news corporation. What if everybody just didn't do that? So I guess, I'm definitely, I don't know if I would say biased, but it's like, I see people that played like inside baseball with mainstream media for 12 years. And then they're like, it's like, dude, no one would know who you were without that machine. Why didn't you do it at the start? But to each their own.
Well, and it is a different world with social media, but it is certainly a different beast when you're independent. So, you make choices. You make choices in life and you deal with the consequences. But it is like, if you sign your name on the dotted line, maybe there's room to say, like, I look at the college loan situation, and I think there's room to say, you know what, the college loan situation is a scam. It is. It's a total scam, and they take advantage of these young kids. But at the end of the day, you still signed your name on the line, and you did that, and you made that choice.
Yeah, I think it worked out for her. She got her music back. She made all the money.
Do you think it worked out for Taylor Swift? Do you think she's doing all right?
100%.
I wanted to all right.
Add this real quick because this is something interesting now that we're talking about the music industry that nobody knows about. There's these big hedge funds or bankers that are buying everyone's music. Like, let's say you're Justin Bieber and you own 50% of your music. Nobody, unless you're like me or Russ or somebody, like owns 100% of their stuff. Everybody had to sell a little bit at least to their company, probably at least half. So Justin Bieber sold his entire discography to some bankers or some hedge fund because they're offering these absorbent amount of money. It's like, here's $200 million. Everyone I know is doing it. Even big artists that are not as big as like Justin Bieber, they're telling me that they're selling to these bankers and hedge funds because, say you don't have that much money and they're like, here's $1 million for all of your music. We'll own 100% forever, but we'll pay you 30-year advance. Basically, like you would probably make $1 million in 30 years. But here's it once. Everyone's selling their music on, like the bankers and the hedge funds own like everyone's music now. That's kind of weird to me, right? Like, I'm not important enough for them to offer me, but everyone I know that's bigger than me, even if they're a little bigger, has sold to their entire discography. Like, no one owns their music anymore. Barely anybody.
You know what? And this is why perspective is so important on these things. And it's hard. Perspective is hard to gain, right? Because you really only get one perspective, your own. And so in order to find out other perspectives, you have to really kind of search and learn and talk to people and, do your own research. I guess, it's kind of a cliche now, but it's true to get these different perspectives. And so it's really hard for people to understand something like that. I kind of compare what you're talking about with these giant hedge funds buying up all the real estate. And so you kind of see this and most people are thinking about their own lives or whatever financial deals they have for this month in their budget, or maybe for a year, or maybe they got a college fund for their kids. It's like, so it's like most people's perspective is very limited. You talk about these hedge funds, you talk about these bankers, you talk about these elite families that just hand these things down. What I hear is they're thinking, hey, you basically have this much time to make money making music. We're going to make money off of your music for 100 years. We're going to make we're going to make money off your music long after you're dead. And so for them, it's like, yeah, why not just cut this deal? Because maybe we're paying a lot right now, but we've got 100 years to make that money back, and we will. It's the same thing that I think that, State Street, BlackRock, Vanguard, all these different groups, I think it's the same thing that they're doing with the real estate market. It's like, and they have enough money, they're probably not even over levered. But even if they did, they'd be like, hey, look, eventually everybody's going to move into our house. Like, eventually everybody's going to be paying us, and we're going to get the returns on these things. And then we have total control over the market. So it sounds like it's a very similar thing. It's monopoly men is what it is.
Right. It's just happening in music, and like nobody knows about it, but because nobody wants to tell people they're selling their discography because it's kind of embarrassing, for like, oh, I'm making $100K a year off music and someone offered me $4 million. I took $4 million and now I don't own any of my music. They're not like telling people. But the same thing you're saying with Vanguard, BlackRock, all that stuff. Here's the question though, and this is kind of the ethical question. If people are just playing money, that's one thing. But, if they mess up on loans, like, will they be forgiven? For example, the bankers, like banks messed up in 2008, right? And then the government just kind of had their back. So I think some people are playing Monopoly with a different set of pieces.
Like a too big to fail safeguard, too big to fail.
Right. And I think that's a huge thing that most people don't understand is banking. Another one, and I'm not saying anything nefarious here. I just kind of did some research. Everybody thinks Dana White owns the UFC. Dana White's the CEO. The UFC is owned by Zuffa, which is owned by Ari Emanuel, whose brother Rahm Emanuel, everybody knows, is a politician. But there's a whole story about Ari Emanuel. It had to do with like loans, and it was a big risk because he bought it with loans. And I don't want to, make mistakes or errors, but you could like look it up into that. So people knowing how to leverage loans, buy things, make money over time. There's a big game being played for sure with the big players. And yeah, I think if you're as big as a bank and you fail, the whole country fails. Or like if Nvidia had a problem, Trump would be a communist in 2 seconds and hop in, because if Nvidia failed, our whole stock market would implode. And I'm not even saying it's wrong to jump in there, but I do think it's wrong to take a percentage of one of the chip companies. I think that's a little weird.
Well, I actually think a lot of that is going on right now. And I think that's why NVIDIA was trying to get into China, got rejected. I think that's China in the trade war with Trump. And now NVIDIA is going into Israel, who obviously is a strong ally of Trump. And so I think Israel is now kind of bailing out NVIDIA because, Trump talks a big game. I got some of this in my news today. I'm not going to get to it. We're about to sign off. But like he talks about all the trillions and all this money. It's like literally not there. I mean, it's literally not even there. And I think that this story is just beginning. Most people don't know that Trump actually bailed out banks. That didn't get any coverage. A couple of months ago, Trump bailed out banks. And so I think that all this talk about the money and the tariffs and everything, I don't think the money's there. And I think that this is going to be a big story to drop next year once people kind of realize it, that, all this big talk and all these trillions, it just simply ain't there. It's just, I don't know if he's making it up or if people are giving him numbers that they just haven't manifested yet, but it's just simply not there. Hey, let me ask you this before we sign off here. As we're talking about the sales of people's music and discographies and everything, have you ever looked into or heard about the conspiracy theory that the reason they offed Michael Jackson was because he didn't want to sell his entire rights to his music and his likeness? And so the let's just say the powers that be knew that was billions of dollars of money that he was keeping from them. And so, he got the little accidental overdose.
I have heard that, and there's videos of him being mad at his old record head. And I think also Michael, like he figured out a way to finesse it where he had a few albums left. He did them real quick. Like he was really smart. Not only that, because I have heard that theory, and I do know he did have issues with his record label trying to get out or do his own thing. Another thing too that's very underrated and talked about is he actually somehow bought the Beatles discography, which is like, dude, if I could pick one band to own, it would be probably the Beatles, like, or Michael Jackson. Like those are so you have Michael Jackson owns Michael Jackson's music and the Beatles music. That's crazy. So that and I think he died, and I think that they did like a forced sell-off or something of the Beatles music. So somehow he finessed or outsmarted somebody to get not only his own music, but the Beatles music. So that is crazy stuff for sure. I've heard the theories. Absolutely.
And then I believe the drug was Demerol that they hit him with. And what's even crazier about this, I don't know how big of a fan of Michael Jackson's music you are. I was a massive fan of his music. Listen to his whole discography. He did a song. What was the name of the song? I forget the name of the song. The song was about morphine. That was the name of the song. The name of the song was Morphine. And in the song, he has a bridge about Demerol. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Really?
You see, yeah, it's wild.
I don't know if you've seen it, but Dick Gregory was really good friends with Michael Jackson. If you YouTube Dick Gregory, Michael Jackson, he says that they killed Michael Jackson, and he like explains it kind of in that YouTube. Watch that. And also Dick Gregory, dude, he's a fascinating guy. I think at one point the paper said he was leading an election. Like he ran for president one time. He was like winning in New York, and then they like shut it down. And he has like newspapers from like 50 years ago. And he's like, yo, the elections are not what you think they are. Like I was winning, and they shut it all down. You got to check out that stuff. Dick Gregory's a legend. But yeah, Dick Gregory killed Michael Jackson. Not he killed Michael Jackson, but if you search those things in YouTube, you'll find the video.
Like that's the title. Like if you search Dick Gregory, Michael Jackson.
Yeah, he did not. I don't think he killed Michael Jackson. He was friends with him. But yeah.
Oh, I would definitely say that was a job. that was a job to off Michael, I believe, which is really sad and heartbreaking because he was really, and then it's like, and even with all the accusations and everything too, you're like, was it all just part of an attack to destroy a good guy? It's like, it's so hard to have good people that get that famous. And it's like, and the ones that do, that's what they do to you.
Right. I mean, look at like Amanda Bynes. That's like so sad. I loved Amanda Bynes when I was growing up. But with Michael, like, let's just say that no conspiracy theory is right. And it was this accidental overdose from a doctor, which is crazy, by the way. But anyway, it's like, let's just say which I saw in the last 10 years, they made everybody in the public hate Michael Jackson. Like, even me, I thought he was terrible. And I'm like, oh my gosh, everything they're saying about him is true. What does that do to your mentally, physically? Like, even if, say, he took his own life, which I think the doctor, right? Didn't he get in trouble for that? But anyway, it's like they try to crush you so that you go, you know what I'm saying? Like, which is like a form of almost just like mass media and societal like destruction of
like
your
the
life.
Episode with Britney Spears.
It's crazy stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, Anomaly, this has been fun. Always great to talk to you. Where can people follow your work?
Instagram, Dream Rare, DREAMRARE, like my sign. If it's even, I don't know if it's reversed or not, but maybe it's backwards. But if not, it's all good. And then
read it. It's straight. It doesn't look Russian.
Okay, cool. And then Twitter, Legendary Energy, all one word. Appreciate you having me on, and I'll be around.
All right, guys. One of the few straight talkers out there in media, Anomaly. Give him a follow. Great to talk to you. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you, my friend.